Hi everybody, and welcome back to This Road Leads to Healing. If you are with me today, it's because something that's being said is grabbing your attention, giving you healing, giving you clarity, and I'm so glad to have you here with me again. So I'm so excited for this topic that we're going to discuss. I have an amazing guest here with me today, Raven. She is someone that I connected with through networking in a networking event, and from there we just linked up. Okay, we linked up like DNA, and it's just been great. We've had some amazing conversations, some really good talking points that's going to be centered around this topic, reparenting myself, because my parents was freestyling. They was out here playing chess with checker pieces, okay? So there is just some growing that's required, and my girl here is going to tell us all about her experience. We're going to chop it up, get deep about different topics. So without further ado, I want to introduce you to Raven. So tell everybody, I like to do this. Tell everybody a little bit about yourself. Let them know who you are and what inspired you to talk about this topic today.
It's like the first day of class.
Yes.
No? Okay. A little about myself. What do I say? Okay. I was born and raised in Mobile, Alabama. I studied fashion and art at Clark Atlanta University, the illustrious.
Yes.
We met through a networking event for fashion, actually. So we do a lot of just like different conversing together about creative stuff, real life stuff, all the things, all the sorts. I have a lot of personal experience with the concept of reparenting, and the timing of this conversation is so divine because I maybe about 2 weeks ago decided like there's a lot I don't know as a result of like just lacking information from my parents or my parental unit. So like something needs to be done about this, and I think I have to like take control of reparenting myself.
I want us to jump into a prayer really quick. I want God to use us and to be able to allow our testimony to be healing for the next generation or somebody that's in this moment right now. So I do want to take your hands,
Take my hand,
and do a prayer. Okay.
Wait, let me scoop.
Okay. God, we just come to you today, first and foremost, giving you thanks. Thank you for the opportunity to just be in this moment, to be able to talk about the things that may not be the most comfortable, but they are healing. They will allow for not only us to heal, but for whoever's out there that's listening to the things that we're saying to be touched by this. Maybe it will give them the strength to have a hard conversation that they haven't been able to have, whether it be with themselves or with somebody that they are in the midst of feeling hurt by, or someone that they don't even know they're being hurt by, but these are the signs that they are able to now gravitate towards and notice like, okay, this isn't right. Lord, I just want you to use us as a vessel. Use our mouths, use our minds, use everything about us that you can right now to just be a light to somebody else, to just cause somebody else to be able to look into the mirror and see a better version of themselves. In Jesus' name, I pray. Amen.
Amen.
When we were talking about this a while back, we both had some topics about just growing up in just toxic environments, not having access to information, not having parents that were fully healed themselves, so they couldn't really show it for us. So when we talk about reparenting, it's literally like down, we might have to scroll back to when we were 2 years old, like wherever that initial thing happened that caused us to feel not heard, not seen, broken, or whatever it is that we registered it as, to then jump into parenting ourselves. So I want to kind of get an understanding a bit more about your upbringing. Like, what led up to this point of reparenting? What are some of the things that you've experienced that you feel comfortable with sharing?
I could probably write a book, but for time's sake, I don't know, just a lot of like inconsistencies from childhood to now. I'll be in my final year of my 20s this year with this upcoming birthday, so a lot of reflection has happened recently about the way that I want the 30s to look, and so that is leaving behind a lot of old habits, unlearning a lot of old habits, really just shedding those layers and like shedding that skin away and developing new skin, new habits, healthier actions. And of course, in order to move forward, you have to go back and kind of dissect where you even develop those habits. And so for me, that's where it really began, like really kind of dissecting a lot of the past and figuring out, just in passing a lot of the time, like, well, why do I fold clothes this way? Or, why do I wash my face this way? All of those little like micro habits that we get into when we don't understand where they come from. But then you go and assess the past and you're like, oh wait, this is why I started doing that. So, yeah.
So, and I relate to that a lot, especially when you go back into your childhood. So just me getting a little vulnerable here, some of the things that I've experienced growing up in a home. I grew up in a very toxic environment where my mom was married to this guy who really just didn't want to take a responsibility of a child that wasn't his. And I was just talked to all kind of ways. My mom was talked to crazy. I witnessed physical abuse, verbal abuse, a lot of stuff that at that time, like, this is not right. This is not okay for a child to be witnessing, experiencing, but yet I didn't really know how to pinpoint why I was in that situation or why it was even happening. And then going from seeing it to hearing what happens in this house stays in this house is such a toxic statement in itself that made me feel like, well, okay, I'm enduring these things and I'm not supposed to talk about it because talking about it is wrong or I'm gonna get in trouble, even though I really should have been talking about it. I really should have had a safe space outside of the home that was causing me pain to take that information and then potentially have somebody help me out of it. So what are some firsthand experiences that you experienced as a child that has impacted you deep?
For context, I was raised by my mom, my sister and I, so single mom. My mom would have different partners here and there, and similar to you, I never really found a kinship to them. I always felt more of an aversion to them. Always really kind of having this feeling, like you said, you just know early on, like, I don't like this dynamic, something's not right about this, but I don't know why. At that age, you're not mature enough to articulate why you feel discomfort in that presence, but nonetheless, I remember just like growing up feeling that my mom was kind of consumed with her personal life, whether it be with a partner or social life, work thing. My mom is also younger too, so at the age that I am coming of age or, just developing through my adolescence, my mom is really consumed with her personal life, as she should, because, she's our age at that time, or much younger. As a matter of fact, she's much younger. And so there seems to be a lot of consumption with her personal experience. And so, of course, with single moms, they have to do everything on their own. And I had it bad because, I spent some of my school years in another city, but the majority of my upbringing was in Mobile. And in Mobile, we wore school uniforms. They still do to this day. And so if you are familiar with wearing school uniforms, they can tend to look a little bit frumpy depending on what school you go to, what your school colors are, what the uniform looks like. They can really dictate a lot of like what your appearance can be. Yeah. And so in that case, you're like very limited on how you can style it up or style it down. Funny enough, the uniforms were bought in as a way to like unify everyone and minimize the ability to like bully anyone or separate anyone, but that didn't work.
That is a whole topic in and of itself. It really is. And I want us to dive into a bit more about, okay, so enduring that identity shift and having to become your own at such a young age and figure things out for yourself, what are a few other areas where you felt like, man, like I said, my mom was freestyling. She dropped the ball. I wish she was trying to shoot from the 3 and she really should have been laying up, What are some areas there?
I want to preface and say, though, like, my mom did a really good job with what she had, like the resources that she had. So I don't want to seem like I'm like ragging on my mom or anything.
No, and it's not that at all, but this is also your healing journey. And, and people are really in this right now. So I do want them to hear your truth, like your real experiences, because something you say is going to touch somebody that's currently in it. And they need to hear and know, like, oh my gosh, I've experienced this too. And if you can get to this point, even though you've endured that, we know we love our parents, regardless of the flaws that they had, but they really did some things that caused us to be to this point.
There were a series of things that took place. I think the biggest thing being just like uprooted a lot and moved around a lot, it really prevented us from being able to like establish real foundations with like friends and neighborhoods and like just like social settings. And so once you get settled in one place, having to relocate and move around, I felt like when I was like in my adolescence, again, my mom is within the proper age to be self-absorbed, but then you still have kids to consider. And so, you know, there's a lot of movement that happens just based on, you know, wherever my mom may be in her personal life, whether that's with a partner or a work thing where you're wanting to be closer, or, you know, move around based on whatever may be going on. And I feel that, you know, a lot of times my sister and I, we were kind of kept in the dark about those changes. They were so sudden a lot of times. You know, we would go from one day being settled into our life, and then the next day you come home and there's like, okay, now we're packing up, and no one really talks you through that process. But yeah, I think mainly the consistency and like the environment was like, you shooting for a 3.
Right, you should really be laying up. And that's something I had to talk to my mom about too, because we moved a lot. And at that time I didn't realize why. I didn't know it was, because financially we just didn't have it. You know, I had to go from place to place just to make sure that we had what we needed. And we moved like I think 5 or 6 times before I was in middle school. And some of the environments that we moved to was just ghetto and crazy. Like, she had us living with this lady that had 2 bad behind kids. Oh. And the little boy was chasing me and his sister around the house with a knife. Like, we had to lock ourselves in the bathroom. When I say crazy, like, girl. So I understand that instability and that feeling of, you know, one moment I'm here in this environment and the next moment I'm in this environment. And then finally when things were stable, now we're in a house with the husband who don't care about who I am, but we're stable, you know? Yeah. So it's like that sacrifice of your kids having a positive experience and a healthy experience was kind of pushed to the side for stability and a life that I wasn't able to provide on my own. And those things are a hard pill to swallow when you start bringing it to the root, but it's the reality of what we had to then endure because of their decisions.
Yeah. I kind of discovered with myself that I may have been a little bit okay about the moves. I probably would have still had my like negative sentiments about them, but I think had someone like walk us through those, you know, that experience, or like kind of walk us through the process of like why the relocations were happening, or why, you know, why do we have to have a significant other? Like, why can't it just be us girls? Or like, why? That's kind of just like this disadvantage, because again, at that age, you don't have the right words you're not mature enough to articulate your concerns and questions. And so it shows up as like you acting out in school, or in my case, I wasn't acting out ever. I was always just kind of like really silly and just kind of looking for different ways to like get the adults in my life to pay attention to me, so someone could bring it up like, what's happening? And then I could use that as like a kind of like a segue to say, well, sit your ass. sit your ass.
And a lot of times we internalize it. And we take it personal. It's like, it has nothing to do with you. But as a kid, you don't know that. Yeah. You don't know why, you know, parents are making the decisions that they're making. And it is important to talk. And I do love the fact that now that we have gone through those things and getting into reparenting ourselves, we will put habits in place that will allow our kids to feel as included as they need to be, as far as having that, okay, this is why we're doing this. Right. We're still going to do it.
Right, we're still going to do it.
But I'm going to explain to you so you don't feel out of the loop or feel like you're just getting pulled and tugged wherever life goes.
And that may not be the end-all, be-all answer, because then, you know, kids, they'll still have their aversions and negative responses, but at least you did your part by including them. Right. And, you know, they'll probably thank you for it later when they get older.
They'll appreciate it.
They'll appreciate it, like, you know, now I get why my mom did that. So, yeah.
So along your journey of having conversations with your parents or your mom specifically about the things that you've experienced, do you find that she tends to like rewrite history as if what you recount never happened?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Especially in recent years where there seems to be like a shift in her mental health. And that alone has brought up a lot of conflict between the two of us. And so in having to have discussions or debates or whatever you have, you know, just having to recount those conversations is always like, oh, well, that didn't happen. Or, you know, there's always this kind of like conversation that happens as if those things were never said. And so then now I'm left looking like, oh, I'm just creating distance for, you know, my own personal reasons. And I'm like, all right, well, I don't have the text messages for that conversation, but you know.
But I know it happened.
But I know it happened. You just wait, but yeah.
So I find that, and I don't even think it's intentional. Let's just say it's not intentional, but it seems to be consistent in homes, especially homes where it's been toxic. Why do parents feel like there has to be struggle in order for life to be
fulfilling?
Yeah.
I think it maybe just starts with their upbringing. I've learned to have a lot of grace for my parents, especially my mom, just in considering the stories that I gather about her upbringing. And so I think with that, if people are taught a certain way, then they carry that into their own lives or their own parenthood, if you will. So if there is struggle or if there's strain, then, you know, that is their normal, you know, nothing else. And so even you can be in the calmest of situations or have, you know, the easiest of situations, but if it isn't raising your stress level or your cortisol level or blood pressure, then this is not my normal.
Right.
It's normal, but it ain't my normal. Somebody else's normal. So I think that's where it comes from. Just like, you know, their personal experience, their upbringing, a lot of habits just start there and they carry them over into parenthood.
And the work isn't being done at that point. And then you get a lot of, well, you had it better than me.
Yeah.
You know, that's where that comparison is. But it's just like, it doesn't matter who had it better or worse. It's just, can we both have it better? Can we both have a great experience just individually in our own lives and then together? Because there's just a lot of healing talk that never happened at their home with their parents.
Yeah.
And that, I agree 100%. I had to give grace with my mom, like when we started having deeper conversations about the things that I've experienced and gone through. And I was like, first I was really harsh, you know, towards her in my approach. I was like, well, you did this and you did that and da-da-da-da. And it's like, okay, I remember going to therapy and talking about it, and just one of the questions raised to me was like, well, how was her experience with her parents? And I was like, oh, I don't know. Like, I've never asked her before. I don't know. So we finally had like this Mother's Day trip that we do with me and my little sister, and we had the conversation, and I was like, what was your upbringing like?
Yeah.
You know, and she shared some stuff with me about how my grandmother was. Just, you know, I love my grandma to death, and I'll be like going back to back when they talk about her, but the truth is the truth as far as the things that they've experienced.
Yeah.
She was very abusive to them, verbally, physically. She would beat them with whatever was around, a bat, extension cord, like it didn't matter. Like, so because she didn't do those things to me and my sister, in her mind it was like, well, I was being a better parent.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, I see that.
Yeah.
I respect that. Thank you for not hitting us like that. You know, that is crazy. Right, exactly, right. But in their minds, it's like, I'm giving you a better version than what I received.
Yeah.
And so sometimes when we see it like that and we start to look at our parents as humans and not parents, it's like you can have empathy even though you were still playing chess with checker pieces.
Yeah.
when you were dealing with me.
But that's where duality comes into play, because I have that issue of being too empathetic, and it's like, oh, well, and to know my mom is to know she's gonna share her experience regardless of if you asked or if you have the threshold. And so you're gonna find out one way or another. A casual conversation does not need to happen in order for her to share her experience. And so just by, you know, I guess involuntarily, I know I'm well aware of a lot of the things that my mom experienced in her childhood. And for a long time, there was this like internal struggle with myself of feeling like one had to take precedent over the other. Like, oh, well, her experience was this, and so I have to kind of, you know, my experience with her has to subside because her thing is more important. And it's like, no, those two things can exist side by side.
Right.
Yeah, she went through a lot of things, but also you don't have to go and convey that type of stress and strain onto your kids,
Right.
you know, in order for them to feel a fulfilled life. It's like, no, you could turn it around and be like, actually, no, I don't want my kids to go through the same experience, the same emotional or mental turmoil. So I'm gonna turn it around and do something else for them. My wounds are mine. They don't have to, you know, be theirs. And so, yeah.
So, what was neglect like for you as a child? And if you could rename it something else, what would you call it?
Okay. Well, if I had to rename it something else, it would probably be just like, because I feel like neglect is such a harsh word, because I was obviously loved and cared for in like, you know, just like the basic way. But there were a lot of things that were kind of like overlooked. There were things about me that were like really overlooked. Maybe kind of low priority. There were things that were like really low priority for me or like really overlooked. And so just thinking back to the time like when I was in 5th grade and I'm like rushing out the house, trying to get ready for school. My mom is rushing, my sister, she's rushing, and we're all just like rushing to get out the house. And I'm like trying to do my own hair, because at that point I had gotten a little bit older where I was like experimenting and doing, you know, playing with little hair accessories and things. And so I remember having a difficult time like getting my hair to like cooperate with the accessory. And my mom was like rushing me. She's like, no, let's go. We have to go. Just like fix it in the car. And it's like raining. And so that's like extra stress. And now, you know, in that moment, I'm realizing like, wait, there's a shift in the way that my mom is helping me get ready for school now. You know, up until then, I'm like way too young to do anything for myself. So everything, you know, she's making sure that we have everything we need, and she's helping us with hair and ironing and all of those things. And so at this point, I'm maybe like 10 or 11, and I'm like, oh, wait, this shift is finally happening. And so for context, my mom is young, but she's like hella old school. And so my mom was one of those parents that was like, I'm not really buying into you, you know, participating in all the little trendy stuff. Like, you know, my mom, she would buy into material things. She would let me have things, you know, based on my interests. But if it was something like, I don't know, everybody got on white Air Force Ones, my mom was not buying that because it doesn't have any longevity. Or, you know, for us, we wore school uniforms in Mobile. And so, you know, the big thing was like Hollister cargo khaki pants or, you know, Airpods or whatever. My mom's like, I'm not buying into that because, you know, for whatever reason, maybe like the cost is just not sustainable, you know, for me to be 11, 12, 13, whatever. And so in addition to not buying into the trendy stuff or like the, you know, the popular things, then she's also not giving me the game that helped her survive school. So now I'm just like, can somebody help me, please? Like, I look a mess. You know, just being fashion designers, we understand how like color works in silhouettes and like garments and textures and things. And so I knew like it wasn't okay. Like I'm not looking well. And so you take that and then you compound all of those things. It's just like, why is nobody helping me? Like I feel neglected. I'm the older sibling, so I don't have any older siblings to go to and help to zhuzh me up before I head out. And my mom is like really into her life at that point, her social life, her peer group and work and things like that. And so it kind of just feels that, you know, anything pertaining to my self-esteem is like glossed over and kind of neglected. And that really affected me negatively. It affected my nervous system negatively because I'm just clamoring for things to help me to survive the bullying and nothing is working. And that kind of like thrusted me into this like lifelong journey of like trying to make up for all those times where like, oh no, I promise I look good in real life. I just need the resources. I just need the help. And so that particular thing, although it was such a small matter, it really impacted a huge part of my life, which is my confidence, my self-confidence, my self-esteem. I started to try and make up for it in other ways. And so because that was neglected for me, I don't know, it just like sent me down a couple of like difficult paths, if you will. So yeah, that's the one form of neglect that's most significant for me from my childhood. The one that hurt the most, you know. Yeah.
I don't want anybody out here that that's going through this to think like those little moments don't matter, because they do.
They matter.
They matter. And any parent that may be watching this that just kind of brushes their kid off or don't really teach them the proper way of knowing what works best for them, like wearing their hair the right way. Bullying, while it's wrong, I get it. It's really, some things are avoidable as far as just giving kids the tools to be able to walk out the house and look the best version of themselves. Yeah. Now, they might not need the latest J's. You might not need to keep up with the Joneses in that way, but at least help them learn how to brush their hair. Help them learn how to wear things that works best for their body types, their skin complexion. Like, all that stuff matters. It matters to identity, self-identity, and self-confidence. It really does. So I feel like I had to like put emphasis on that, because I don't want people to kind of brush past that as if it's not a big deal, because it really is.
Just to your point, those things matter, like helping your children get ready, even if, you know, regardless of gender, like you want to make sure that your kids feel good within themselves and not attach it to anything or anybody, any other elements. It's like, no, this is important for how they're going to show up as an adult. You know, Jessica, the school bully, that shit matters. Right. You know what I mean? That is I have to see her every day. I see her more than you. Right. You know what I mean? So I do need to make sure I got on the latest J's to make sure I can walk past her without getting judged, you know? And it don't have to be that extreme. It can always, even if you're teaching your kids, like, you know, yeah, I can get you the forces, but look, in a few years, you're gonna realize them shit's not even as fly as they making them seem.
Okay, let's see. I want to shift into that, because that piggybacks into the next question of the emotional component that came with that. Did you have that emotional validation? Like, when you express certain things to your mom, like, did she hear you and talk to you about it, or did you have to internalize everything?
It was kind of a 50-50 situation. Like, my mom was really understanding in like my struggles with bullying. A lot of times I would hide it from her. And I think, again, being young, you just don't really know how to, like, you're not mature enough to articulate what's really happening. And for me, I think I would like hide things from her at times, but sometimes I would express, you know, like, oh, this is happening and that is happening. And at the time, I was just like, no, you know, I feel like my mom doesn't see me. Like, I'm going through all of these things, these like psychological defects because of my peer group or my environment at school. I'm being bullied all the time. And it's like, you can't see that. You can't see the changes in me. You aren't helping me with anything. You aren't helping to, you know, devoid that or, you know, help me to survive it. You know, my mom was always really good about like comforting me in it, but it was like, it still wasn't like ending anything. And so now looking back, I have a lot of grace from my mom because, you know, maybe there wasn't much of an approach to it because she wasn't taught those things. Like, she's still probably grieving with her own bullying and like, you know, outcasting that she dealt with, you know, at that age. And so maybe she never really develop the tools to share that with her daughters or her future kids. She's still probably grieving that. You know, I kind of just had to like tough it up, tough it out for the most part until I got old enough to start kind of just doing my own thing, like making clothes and piecing things together. I will say though, the saving grace, though I miss my hometown, the saving grace was we moved out of Mobile around like 8th grade for me. And so I started high school in a different city where we didn't wear uniforms. And so I was able to have more individuality in my appearance. So that was kind of a saving grace. Yeah. But I always kind of wonder like, what would have become of that experience had I still been there for high school and beyond, you know?
Yeah. Just going through all those different places and experiences that you've had. Now you're at the road of, it's time to reparent myself. Yeah. What was your initial thought of what reparenting looked like for you? And what has it really been now that you're in it?
So there was a lot happening around the time that I'm like in middle school with my mom and like a boyfriend that she had at the time, and we're having to move around because it's no longer safe to stay in our home. And so at that point, you know, we're kind of like living with family, and I only grew up with my mom's family. There are a lot of complex relationships on that side between all of the adults. And just being really insightful at that age, I was always very aware and observant. And, you know, you just kind of grow to know who you can confide in, who you can, you know, lean on when you need things. And so I think at a certain point, I started to feel a lot of disappointment in the adults in my life. I kind of like took on this like role of parenting myself really young, and I kind of said to myself like, all right, this situation that we keep being in by way of the adults in our life, we're never going to experience this when we become adults. And so maybe around like 12 or 13, I made the conscious decision to like parent myself and rely on myself. And so I expressed to you that started to show up in like my creative endeavors. And so I'm like sewing things in high school just to make money for like my own little personal things like prom or, you know, just lunches and things, you know, and then that expands into my like college years, and I'm just like really dependent on myself, and I developed this inability to like let people help me. And so, and then in addition to that, I'm just really hard on myself. I'm very critical of myself. Like, oh, this is wrong. Do it over. Oh no, you need to get up. No, why are you late? Why are you napping? Why are you resting? We should be going, because we can't let ourselves get back to the place that we were when we were 12 or 13, you know, because of the adults. Like, we can't, what are you doing? Like, this is just straight up survival mode. And so I was just really hard on myself all the time. Recently, I hit like this boiling point with my previous job, and I was dealing with a lot of harshness from that environment on top of the harshness that I had like experienced from my internal parent that I created, and it just started to be too much. It's like, wait a minute, everything is beating up on me right now, wait a minute. And then I started to realize, wait, parenting yourself rather, it doesn't have to be so strict and so hard and so painful and so, I don't know, just like so brutal. It can be kind, it can be gentle, it could be reassuring yourself like, this is okay that you messed up, you know, allowing yourself to make mistakes. It's okay that you want to take a nap. That's normal.
Right.
You only got 4 hours of sleep. That's okay. That you want to take a nap. And so just like taking a softer approach to the way that I parented myself. So for me, this is a re-parent.
Yes.
Yeah.
At what age did you say, okay, I appreciate everything you've done, 12-year-old me, but you can't see over the steering wheel. So it's time for you to get in the back seat so that the adult me can get in the driver's seat. How did you shift things in you? Like, what was the changes that you made as far as how you parented yourself?
So to answer the first question, when did I decide to kick 12-year-old me to the curb? 2 years ago.
Okay.
2 years ago. I started to notice that, and this could have been just a result of like a buildup of all of the stress and strain from like work, or just I kind of had hit this like, again, like a boiling point where I was just like, something is being too hard on me. I'm like, everything is I'm so sensitive to everything out in the world. But a couple of years ago, I just started to find it so difficult to be outside, like physically, mentally, emotionally. Even things like, even something as small as like going to the grocery store and like going down an aisle that was initially empty, but now here comes like 2 other people, and I go into immediate like survival mode. I tense up, I'm like agitated that someone else is on this aisle with me. Like, why can't I go out in the world and just feel safe and feel alone? You know what I mean? Like, feel safe. I'm like having all of these like really negative interactions at work with people, just like negative interactions with friends and family. And it seems that every time I engage with the outside world, I would just tense up until I sat down with myself and I was like, well, just kind of trying to do like a side-by-side comparison of like, when do I go into that tense up mode? You know, when does that happen? And a lot of times it was when the survival mode kicked in. And when I felt that my safety was threatened, when I felt like my stability was being threatened, my security, finances, whatever, when I feel that those foundational elements were being threatened, that was when, you know, my 12-year-old parent showed up. There was a specific time period where I was like, every time I leave the house, I'm ready to go back inside. Like, I feel unsafe.
Yes.
Standing in line at the grocery store, like, everything is a potential hazard. And I knew that, you know, my 12-year-old parent self, I kind of had this, like, I guess, personal depiction of what that parent looked like. It's somebody that's always on alert, always keeping you safe, always stability.
Yeah.
You know, take the money regardless of the conditions of the job. It's paying you, like, and it's keeping us from going back to how things were when we were 12. Keep it. I was like, all right. Thank you for all that you have done, but you are crazy.
Right.
You gotta go. Like, how can I fire you? You know, so yeah, that was how we got rid of her. I'm like, that's not how life should be. You should be able to live without feeling like you're on edge all the time, you know. And I think it was strictly because of the circumstances of my life at that time. Everything was so chaotic, so inconsistent, and it didn't stop. It kept going even into high school. My mom, she gets injured, and then that dominoes into all of these miscellaneous health issues and like all these things that are kind of like thrusting me into adulthood way earlier than I'm even equipped for. And so, you know, 12-year-old, here she comes, 12-year-old Raven, she's like, all right.
I know how to fix this.
Let's
get it.
Let's get it. No, for real.
And that really does, and sometimes people don't understand right there. Like, sometimes people don't understand that. Experiencing that and then being an adult, they look at it as, oh, you're so harsh, you're so this, you're so that. And it's like, no, you just don't understand the protection that I've had to, like, put over myself, right, to be in a place of safe, and even those around me, because you said you have a younger sister, so not only were you parenting yourself, you were parenting your younger sister as well too. So that plays a huge dynamic into how we are as adults. But then shifting out of that, it's like, okay, I had to have this conversation with myself too. It's like, okay, I am safe. Things are not what they were. I do not have to allow myself to be in environments or situations anymore that look like what I've experienced. So now, what type of behavior do I want to have? Like, if in the ideal world, how do I want to show up for myself and those around me? Because if I'm able to be, like you said, the soft, the gentle, the patient version of myself, that means that anything that comes in this orbit has to allow me to be this version of myself, or else you gotta go.
You gotta go.
You gotta go. Because if I don't kick you out, you're gonna start making me have to be who I was, the 12-year-old version of myself that I got her in the back seat and we friends now. Like, and it may not look like kicking her all the way out, because in reality, she is a part of you. Like, my 12-year-old version is a part of me, and there's a time and a place for that version of ourselves, like in our creative place. It's like the adult me gotta go. Bye-bye. The overly critical, I gotta have everything perfect. At first, you gotta sit in the back seat, let the 12-year-old get in here and play around and have some fun, because she's a pro at this.
Right.
She's not judging nothing. It's just like, we're just doing whatever, and then once we figure out what we're gonna do, okay, thank you. Now the technical, analytical person, come to the front. Let's fine tune this. How do we make this look how we want it to look? So it does work, coincide. It's just about finding that balance.
Yeah.
All right, so this part of the segment, we are gonna get into a little game I like to call Act It Out.
Okay.
So this is one of the 3 sets of cards that I have for This Road Leads to Healing. And on this card, you will have to act out the scene or act out the question in whatever genre it asks you to do so.
Are you acting with me?
I can do one extra one, or maybe I can do the same one you do. We'll see.
Okay.
But I'll act it with you.
I'm gonna close my eyes.
Okay. All right.
Pretend you're an old wise guru giving terrible life advice. The genre is fantasy adventure. Act it out. Well, young buck, back in my day. When you take the road less traveled, the travel is the road less.
Uh-huh.
When you add 1 plus 2, and you go up the mountain, you get 3.
Oh.
But don't come back down to the mountain Ticket 1 and 2. That is all I have for you today. And now you can be on your way. I need to shuffle these because you probably know all of them. See, don't be peeking. No peeking.
I hope I don't get a hard one. Come on. Keep it simple. Keep it
Keep
cute.
it simple. What is that?
Oh, okay. This is perfect for me. Pretend you're a lawyer defending yourself for texting your ex by accident.
Woo!
Courtroom drama.
Okay.
Ooh, goodness. Okay.
You must have had some martinis or something.
Yeah.
Text me.
Okay, and it's like by
Text.
accident with the quotation marks. Okay, texting your ex by accident, pretend you're a lawyer. Your Honor. So let me just tell you, it was 6 p.m. Thursday. I was driving my car. I almost went over a speed limit. But when I looked to my left and to my right, I saw the trees. And I slowed down and my thumb texted, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, I miss you, where you at? And I didn't realize until after I sent it that I was sending it to my
You know who? I'm sorry.
my ex marks the spot. And I don't think that I should be held liable for this because the trees on the left and the right,
Right.
they were at fault.
Got you.
That's my story, Your Honor, and I'm sticking to it.
Why you always lying?
Yep.
See. You know, when you started, I thought you were going to be like, it was 7 p.m. Friday.
I should have.
I
should have.
So I get it.
That would have been funny.
I get it.
All right, do one more.
All right. Let's see. Let me grab this. Reenact a time you tried to stay calm, but your face said everything. Silent film or soap opera. Today, it's a rainy day outside, about 64 degrees Fahrenheit. I've decided that I'm going to resign to my sewing machine. What's this? A pillowcase? I'll take a stab at it. Maybe I'll sew until my partner gets home. Oh, I'll just... But wait! My finger is stuck in the sewing machine needle. I think I need to go to the emergency room. Scene.
Oh my God. I should not. This is hilarious.
I sewed my finger once and I lost it.
I've heard people talk about that, and I've never think this week. Knock on this real wood.
Never.
Never happened, thank God. But what was the experience like?
Can I cuss?
Yes.
That shit was so painful. And then, like, when it happened, I didn't realize it. It took me, like, maybe a few seconds to realize, did I just effing sew my finger? Yes. And it's funny because a few days later, I found the tip of the needle in my finger and I, like, dug it out. Ooh. It was a whole thing. So I'm a surgeon now. I'm putting that on my resume.
Okay,
yeah.
Free and should.
Yeah.
Prices increase.
Prices
Blood
going
costs
up.
more. Blood sold separately.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah. There was no remaining calm, and that face showed it all. Being in the South and growing up as a little Black girl, everything about you gets sexualized from a really early age. And so I mentioned just switching schools and there being a difference in the fit of my uniform and the colors and the way that they complimented or did not compliment. Right. So a huge part of it was just going, like, transitioning through adolescence into, like, pre-womanhood, and no one really guiding you, no one really teaching you about how things are meant to fit, how things are meant to look or complement the body. And, you know, if you mention wanting to feel, you know, a certain way in your clothing, I want it to look a little bit more fitted, I want it to look a little shorter and tapered, and then that becomes the sexualized thing of, like, oh, you're being fast, or oh, you're being too grown, or you're trying to, you know, look a certain way for boys. It becomes like your your desire to feel good about the way that you look and feel confident about it, it gets attached to other
Things,
other things, like other circumstances. So it's like, okay, well, well, where does it begin for me? Because even now, I don't have the habits of, my friends where I'm like, if something goes wrong with my hair, I can just book a hair appointment. I gotta justify it, right? Like, oh, well, like this is me talking to myself. Well, this is a good investment, because instead of just being like, no, my hair looks a mess. I don't know how to do it. Let me just go and get it, or getting my nails done, buying certain clothes. Like, I can have holes in my clothes and I still need to justify buying new clothes. Like, oh, well, this jacket will last me at least 2 winters. Papa, please. So those things, just like starting your kids off early and paying, like, that shit matters. I know, like, for parents, they look at us and they're like, oh, well, they kind of brush us off, like, because we don't have big responsibilities like them. Like, we don't have to go to work, or we don't have to pay bills. We shouldn't have those same stresses, but they don't realize, like, at that age, that is our whole world. Those things are big to us.
Do you believe that you can reparent yourself without having those type of conversations with your parents? Like, without having them involved in the process?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm in the phase of doing that myself. Because what I've learned about, like, epiphanies and breakthroughs is, like, you can share them with people, but they may not be ready to adhere to those breakthroughs and revelations. And so it's like, sometimes when you ever have, like, conversations with people about, like, an epiphany or a breakthrough, and you feel like you overshared because the reaction was, like, kind of lackluster. And so that's always what I'm afraid of. Like, not afraid, but I'm always kind of concerned just in general about, like, sharing things with people, like sharing my breakthroughs and my mental processes with people, and there being a lackluster reaction. And because then that could, like, turn you off from being optimistic about, like, that uphill climb for yourself. Like, no, I'm really excited about evolving past this, but then your mom or dad are like, well, and now you're discouraged, and now you're stuck in that rut of being like, well, I'm like, it traps you in this cycle of waiting to have approval from them to move on. And so, to answer your question, yes, I think that you can reparent yourself without having them be aware of what you're doing or being involved. I think that once you work on your individual relationships with them, separate from what's happening inside internally, then that's when things start to, like, meet in the middle. That's what's worked for me. But just kind of, like, observing them and monitoring, like, the way that my interactions go with them, because then that's what gives me my reassurance for what happened. It's like you're building something behind the scenes that nobody knows about, and it's like, and then, you like, kind of peep the scene for, like, how people might react. Like, all right, I'm gonna go back here behind my curtain and finish building. But yeah.
Okay, I love that. So what is some advice that you would give someone out there now that may be experiencing what you're going through, like just reparenting themselves, taking the initiative and the responsibility? What is some advice you would give?
Well, the first thing I would say is buy a journal. Invest in a journal. I had a friend of mine, like, 5 years ago, tell me, like, oh, I think you should get into journaling. I really think that you could do well with journaling. And I was like, girl, a diary? Like, you want me to write this down? Like, I got enough going on in my head. You want me to write it down? And then I remember the first journal entry, like, 5 or 6 years ago. Like, I talked a lot of shit. This feels good. I got addicted to it. And so what I found that with journaling helps me to, everybody kind of, like, processes things in their own format. But, like, with journaling, the beauty of it is, like, the more that I write, the more pours out. And so there could be, like, thoughts that are uncovered that I wasn't even, like, consciously trying to bring forward. It's like, oh no, this is actually probably why I do this. And now your hand is, like, writing by itself. It's not even, you're not even, controlling it anymore. It's like, all right, any day now, please stop. But definitely journaling. And I would probably say, try not to wait on permission from your parents to do so. because that was kind of the hardest part for me. Looking for the okay to bring those things up, because you never have to bring them up to them. You can just bring them up with yourself. If you have a certain type of relationship with your parents that is leaning more towards negative and it keeps going, it seems like it's never ending, I think at some point you have to stop in your tracks and be like, all right, this is probably going to keep being this way. I can't change them. I'm never going to be able to change them. They have to change on their own. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to invest my energy more so in my own experience and less in theirs. And they'll arrive at that experience when they're ready.
I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, you guys. Well, you heard it first and you heard it best from Raven. Thank you so much for joining us on This Road Leads to Healing. This has been a very good conversation, and I hope that you guys have gained something from this and that you take these keynotes and apply it to your life. And I pray that you have a great recovery or a journey or whatever it is that you may need from what you just heard. All right, y'all. Be blessed. Have a good one.
Bye.
All right. That's a wrap. We gonna laugh. We might cry. And most importantly,